Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Joe Tossi from TechTables.com, and you're listening to the Public Sector Show by Tech Tables. This podcast features human-centric stories from public sector CIOs, CISOs, and technology leaders across federal, state, city, county, and higher education. You'll gain valuable insights into current issues and challenges faced by top leaders. Through interviews, speaking engagements, live podcast tour events, we offer you a behind-the-mic look at the opportunities top leaders are seeing today. And to make sure you never miss an episode, head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and hit that follow button and leave a quick rating. Just tap the number of stars that you think this show deserves.
Welcome to day 3. Let's go. Thrilled to have Mike Hojnicki, Chief Information Officer at Newcastle County, Delaware, Chris Chirgwin, Chief Information Officer for Santa Barbara County, Richard McHattie, Chief Information Officer for Maricopa County, and Don Ingle, Industry Executive Advisor at SAP. Welcome to the Public Sector Show by Tech Tables. Rich, we'll start with you. For those who don't know you, you've been on the podcast before, but short little background and intro.
Sure. Thanks for having me on the podcast. Rich McHattie, CIO for Maricopa County. I've been in the county for almost 20 years now, which is a little hard for me to believe. I came from private sector in the energy industry, business development for a few years. And then our previous podcast was about my experience startup with RFID microchip technology for companion animals. So I'm currently managing an exceptional team. Some of them are in the room today, which is great, with about 200 plus IT professionals managing about 50 lines of business in the 4th largest county in the country. Very honored to have that responsibility. And again, glad to be here.
Okay, so it's the 4th largest county.
I think there's some debates.
Because I've been hyping you as the 2nd largest.
Yeah, you can go a second. That's fine.
Chris?
Good morning. Chris Chirgwin, CIO for the County of Santa Barbara. I've been in my role just under 2 years, and similar to you, came from the private sector. Been in IT services for about 25 years. During that period of time, started up 3 different companies and sold 2 of the 3. Now in the public sector. The County of Santa Barbara is about 500,000 residents. We have about 5,000 employees and IT staff. If you look at central IT and then the other departments, we have about 170 IT staff throughout the county.
Yeah, and Santa Barbara is very unique in the sense that there's a lot of college. There's quite a few colleges there, UCSB, Westmont, Santa Barbara City College, and all the cruise ships that drop people off. They don't actually get accounted in the official stats for the population there. So that town is definitely hopping. So you said you sold 2 companies, but you didn't also say the third thing, which was you also sold a domain.
Oh yeah, I told you the story last night.
And you sold a domain.
So back in the mid 90s, I started buying domain names back in the early days. And I bought Nike shoes, I bought Nordstrom, I bought all these different companies when you could do that. And then within about a month, I started getting letters from attorneys saying, you need to turn over the domain names. And I was like, I'm not going to win this battle. And ended up though with one domain that I did sell for $11,000 in 1995. So that was, I guess it was a victory.
That's a serious side hustle in 1995, okay? Mike, you've been on the podcast also. Quick intro.
Joe, great to be back again with you. Mike Hojnicki, CIO, Newcastle County, Delaware. So I started my career at 25 years at state government, spent the last 8 in the C-suite, central IT, and then transitioned to local government, which is a whole different, way of business from you have the state to the local where the rubber hits the roads. Great opportunity. I'm from Newcastle County, the first county in the first state. It's the smallest one at this table right here.
Is it the only county?
It is the third. We are the largest. 60% of the state government our residents is in Newcastle, about 570,000 residents. We have 2,100 employees and an IT staff of around 30 supporting the county.
Great. Don?
Hey, thank you for the opportunity. I'm the private sector guy, so please treat me well here as we go. But my career is a flip of these 2 gentlemen here. I'm Industry Executive Advisor at SAP. Basically, I try to bring some credibility to our message, having been a CIO in my past. I actually spent about 25 years as an IT executive in local government. Here in the West, most recently a little over a decade as CIO of Boulder, Colorado. And my role is to try to modally communicate within our company and with our customers what our vision is, represent the needs and the dreams, if you will, of public sector, try to bring some sensitivity to some of the unique challenges that exist within particularly the state and local level. And really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I was at your San Antonio event, absolutely outstanding. You got me hooked.
Even though someone took our riverboat for our last round table.
I remember that.
And we ended up in a restaurant. It was great. The art of being agile and flexible when your boat is missing. Yeah, it worked out great. Rich, since we're in Arizona, let's kick off with you. Last year we recorded episode 157 on Maricopa's one-stop shop strategy for providing residents with the best possible unified experience for consuming services. You had mentioned a lot of CIOs in the state of Arizona are talking about this, which I think is really interesting. How are you thinking about a seamless experience in Maricopa County? And what are 2 to 3 projects that you can share with the audience today that are in flight?
Yeah, so we're, as you mentioned, talking with JR and others in the state, everyone is trying to tackle this improved resident experience. It's a huge priority for our board. So for those of you who may not be familiar with Maricopa County, we're federated, we have elected departments, we have about 50 lines of business. So if you're coming in to do business with Maricopa County, if you're a resident, if you're a business, you hit the website and you try to figure out where do I go from here, what services are online, what's available to me here in Maricopa County. So the general approach for us is how do we improve that resident experience where it's transparent? Once you hit Maricopa County, you shouldn't have to know there's an elected assessor, elected treasurer. It's just one seamless, frictionless experience to get to everything you need. We saw some of this, the catalyst, unfortunately, it was an unfortunate catalyst in the pandemic, but we moved a lot of services, like I think many did, online. And we want to continue that journey and get ideally as much as we can in terms of digital services online. Many of our constituents, of course, they have to take off work. It's a rough experience for them to have to come into a brick and mortar, if you will, to get, especially in 2024, right? Everyone expects same experience you have in your personal life. You can buy a ticket online, you can check in with your smartphone. We want that same experience for the county. And while we're a little bit behind, we have some pretty serious ambitions to get there quickly in terms of improving that resident experience. Some of that is going to involve new technologies that we all hear at every conference. You can't go anywhere without talking about AI and how that technology can help revolutionize and transform some of those things. Overall, everything we can do to provide that single experience coming into the county, everything online to the extent possible, and leveraging all the technology we can with AI, because the 2 sides of the coin are we want the resident experience, but we're also government, right? We have limited funding, we have limited staff. So if we don't leverage AI and other technologies, we're just not going to be able to advance and transform those services.
Is there a favorite use case, maybe as a consumer of those services, that you're like, hey, as a citizen of Maricopa County, I really want this service? What is that service?
Okay, so this is probably going to be surprising, and if you laugh, that's fine. But believe it or not, in the county, we have 50 lines of business. One of the most important things for our residents, adoptions, pet adoptions. As we look at our stats, as we're going through service design, and we're like, what are our residents really looking for as they come to the county? That is always the most prominent search. For me, that was surprising. Right? We've got courts, we've got the sheriff, we've got county attorney, we have all these serious lines of business, but a lot of it is really driven by those kind of things. But again, we have 50 lines of business. It just depends on who you are as a resident. If you're engaging the court system or you're doing some of those things, that's important to you at that time. And one last point on that, I think part of our challenge, and others may speak to this too, is how do you handle with such a large variety of lines of business, if you will, where do you focus your time and energy to get the biggest bang for the buck?
Yeah, one of the things I've thought about is this proactive approach to government services. So this isn't actually for Chris, this would be for the city CIO in Santa Barbara. But I want to know when trash day isn't happening, for example. I didn't do the trash before I left here, but I want the notifications. Hey, there's a holiday here the following Monday that falls on the 3rd moon that's rising, won't do trash this day, right? I just want a notification. Great, I don't have to put out the trash. That's just like one small example of proactive services. But Chris, we recently released episode 172, and one segment of our interview included the technology modernization efforts in Santa Barbara County. What's one example of a one-stop shop strategy or modernization effort in Santa Barbara County that has directly impacted the residents?
Yeah, I'll answer that in a second. So pet adoptions in Maricopa County. In Santa Barbara County, our #1 website are the weather stations that are around the county. So Public Works website, so people can go see what's the rainfall in this area and what's the reservoir levels. And you just never know what the residents are interested in, right? But that's our highest trafficked website.
Wait, really? Because it never rains in Santa Barbara.
That's why it's so popular.
I think it's more recently popular. Because I'm like, I never check the weather in Santa Barbara.
But back to your question, I think every county is at a different stage in their maturity level of digital modernization. Unfortunately, Santa Barbara County, I would say we've got a long way to go. When I came on board just under 2 years ago, the county did not have a CIO, has never had a CIO. We didn't even have a standalone IT department. So when I came in, it was a tall order to say, okay, we're way behind. We've got a lot to catch up on. One of the first things that I did was form a standalone IT department. So that took about a year to get that up and running, building the team, getting the right people in the right seats. And now we're starting to shift our focus towards more of that digital modernization, the resident experience, things like that. And some of the things that we're doing right now, as Joe, we seem to have a ton of natural disasters in our area, whether it's fires, floods, mudslides, you name it. I think our EOC has been activated over 20 times in the last 5 years. And for our residents, access to what's going on, is my area being evacuated? Those type of things are critically important to our residents. And so in the last 6 months or so, what we've done is we've really tried to centralize all of our GIS efforts that were spread out amongst different departments and very siloed. So we're bringing that all in together, and now we're starting to look at some different services like evacuation management software and things like that that are resident facing, that gives them real-time information about, hey, is my neighborhood being evacuated, or what's the latest warnings, or those kind of things. And really trying to put an emphasis in that area because it has been such an issue for our county. Other things we're doing, the Board of Supervisors constantly is coming to me saying, hey, we've got to get our permits in a better place. The different departments, Public Works and Planning and Development, they just don't communicate. And so residents have to go and have separate logins for each of these different departments based on what they're doing. And so we're using Excel Online, and what we're trying to do is really integrate different departments, and so that the residents have one login, can go to one place, and whatever their needs are, it's one interface for them. So those are just some examples of things that we're trying to do in the short term while we're trying to build up the systems and processes and infrastructure to be able to do bigger things in the future.
Yeah, I like the emergency management. Santa Barbara is, I think most people know, it's like, hey, this is a really beautiful place. It's crazy the number of natural disasters that come through. You get 2 inches of rain, the place is flooding. Sometimes if it's just really dry, the thing just catches on fire, which is a huge problem. Or the mudslides, which is crazy. But I'm excited that you're laying that foundation right now to then move on to some of the other stuff. Mike, I had to look this up because you came back on the podcast on July 2022.
Time flies.
Man, was I in diapers? Yeah, Jack was in diapers. We released episode 103. You talked about driving agility and innovation within local government. How is Newcastle County thinking about the resident experience, and how has that evolved since 2022?
As we talk offline, the local government is really where the rubber hits the road, right? We're right there with the citizens, and it's our opportunity to really have a direct impact from IT. Looking back, my executive has a software engineering background, so IT, he's always asking why not, and when can we? And if I have the budget, we can. So he pushed us, really challenged the team to, like, payments, for example. Why can't we Venmo our payments for our tax collection or our source? So we're able to upgrade our platform to now accept marble modern payment engine, but simplify the user experience there. Speaking about permits, so that's my next major project. It's really unifying my land use with Public Works, with a single system, with a single portal to really get that as the contractors come in, the information flows from Public Works to accounting for billing. So we're really focused on that. From the outreach to the community, we do a lot of engagement with the community around our libraries. We're rebuilding libraries and building new libraries with innovative solutions, with a room with podcasting, right? You can go in, you can do your recording, you can produce your podcast right in our library. And we're setting up the esports with a 4V room so people can come in. And the community provides the input to what we want inside the experience. So it's not just IT online, it's actually the innovation within our public libraries that's taken on a whole new position within the communities today. So we're still driving our website for accessibility. In government, we have to make sure we're accessible. So we just recently went through a whole process of putting tools in to ensure compatibility, accessibility, and customization when you hit our website. So that's really the focus as we move forward and continue to get the departments working together and sharing information, breaking down the silos.
That's great. This story, I think, was you told it on the first podcast in 2020. I'm just going to highlight it because you should definitely listen to it. But I think it was during COVID. You needed to get some stuff done. Procurement office was moving very slow, and
that's my department.
Mike's innovative approach to get computers to some key folks was just, what did you go to, Best Buy? Costco. Just start swiping cards and making it happen. I love that. That's a great story. So Mike talks about that story on the first episode. Don, SAP is known for its powerful data platforms. How can these platforms be leveraged to improve the resident experience and provide decision makers with real-time actionable insights?
One is I feel pretty passionately this topic is not only about the front end, the citizen-facing side, but a lot of the back-end processing. The other is I've always been a firm believer that it's not anathema to talk about examples that coincide from the private sector with public sector challenges or even international stories as well. We actually aren't known that widely in the public sector as being what I'll call a platform company. A lot of jurisdictions look at us as being a big monolith. 87% roughly of GDP flows through an SAP system. Automatically in the public sector, the interpretation is big SAP, very private sector focused, too expensive, too complex, et cetera. But we have been through a process of really changing our entire paradigm by becoming an all-in cloud company. So starting from food, shelter, clothing to being self-actualized. We really believe that our platform technology is the food, shelter, clothing of what we do. And what it is basically is a business technology platform that includes in-memory database processing, not having to go to disk or virtual storage, the ability to integrate AI capabilities, an integration platform, the analytics capabilities. A lot of those back-end systems is really what makes possible for us to be able to deliver not only an ERP experience that is empowering for end users, but also bring data sources from all sorts of different disparate systems, integrate those and present those in a way that actually can be used productively, even outside that ecosystem of finance and HR.
When we talked offline, you mentioned that there were a few jurisdictions regarding citizen experience, a resident experience that we were talking about. Can you tell us a little bit more about any specific projects the city, county leaders here would love to hear from you?
Sure. Again, getting to that concept of this being a lot about the front end side, we have a lot of different organizations that we've worked with around the globe actually in a citizen-facing paradigm. We have a CRM system. It's one of the top ones from market share perspective, but we're really focused on what we call CX. You probably heard customer experience. We actually take it a step further and think of it in terms of voice of the customer. Some examples of that are the city of Christchurch in New Zealand, going back to 2011, I believe it was, major earthquake, major shakeup to the infrastructure, to citizens' lives there. The city came out of that saying, we need to integrate our systems. We need to provide some public-facing capabilities to give that, as you gentlemen talked about, single face to government. And we worked really hard with them to provide the web presence, the CRM capabilities, what have you. City of San Diego for a number of years, one of the first to actually use both geospatial Esri technology and ours to create the ability to report a pothole, things of that nature. That's pretty common now, but they used it as an ability to interface with their asset management systems and what have you, rather than just making it an onboarding tool. Lots of different examples of that I think exist, but I think the point that really gets lost, and I think COVID was an example, a lot of jurisdictions did a great job of changing the front end of how they communicate with their communities. The back end is still a little bit rotten, quite honestly. The lack of ability to integrate systems that provide a citizen response, whether that's the ability to feed to an asset management system, the ability to feed to a public safety system, what have you. We're really focused on trying to integrate on the back end those systems to make the whole customer experience, if you will, not only vivid, but accurate in terms of the response and what have you. One thing that really charges me up as well is we have a product called Signavio. It is basically a process mining tool that uses AI and machine learning to help optimize business processes. It actually can take things like log data from disparate systems, not only SAP, and give you recommendations on how to improve business processes on the back end. Really paradigm changing for us, because our big challenge, I think, as any technology company or organization is the balance between the people, process, and technology. If you don't have a balanced stool, one leg's going to cause the whole thing to collapse. And so we're really focused on trying to not only be a software provider, but an organization that can help organizations take a look at their business processes and try to optimize those.
That's great. Thanks, Don. Rich, that dovetails really well with the Gen AI, LLMs, and any virtual assistants. Could you just talk about that within the IT portfolio in Maricopa County?
I definitely like your comment on the back-end systems, right? Because when we're looking at the customer experience, if we don't have a mature foundation for that, when you start looking at data, back to all the departments in our federated structure, if we can't integrate and talk to those systems, it falls apart right at the front end. So we have to be able to do it all the way from the initial engagement from that resident business wanting to do business with Maricopa County all the way through to all the different organizations. We've got solutions that are on-prem, in cloud, custom. It's a big task, so I appreciate that. And I think part of what's going to get us there is AI. So we created a new position recently, Chief of Innovation and Emerging Technologies, really to focus specifically on that, right? How we can't hire our way out of this. I think everyone probably has the same challenges. How do you hire talented individuals in the public sector? Our pay, our compensation. I kid around with you. You get no signing bonus. There's no company car. You don't get a credit card. None of that exists in the public sector. But we can do things like leveraging new and emerging technologies so that we're not viewed as anything other than innovative, because we have a lot of innovation happening in the county. I hear it from everyone I talk to at events like this. There's a lot of great stuff happening. But every time it's almost, how many times do we have to hear about AI? We get it, right? AI is it. That's what's going to get us out of this. He's got a lot of exciting things that he's leveraging right now from things that he's built previously. So leveraging things like Watson to do a true virtual assistant. Again, to the back end, the staffing challenges, if we can leverage those things, we accomplish a number of different things. We deal with the staffing issue, right? We can, all that, I'll call it the mundane, repeatable interactions, as long as those are a true natural language kind of interaction. All of a sudden, we've got 24/7 virtual assistant. Never gets sick, never takes vacation. So if we can get some of those things at a county level, we'll get over some of those challenges. And then it goes way deeper. And from talking to Aaron, and anyone who's talked to Aaron, he's got some pretty big aspirations about how he's going to piece his Legos together, as he likes to say. Because it's not just the customer experience, it's the operational pieces. How do we leverage AI in all our applications, our business process automation, robotic process automation? All these things are in motion right now for us that I think will help us get into that true transformation base, right? Be viewed as a true partner to our business. They're desperate for these kind of solutions just for survival themselves as they deal with staffing challenges. So I think there's a lot of exciting things, and I know from others I've talked to locally here just to promote our Arizona folks, right? A lot of innovation happening at the state and elsewhere.
No, yeah, that was really good. When you were at the Superior Court, and then I saw on LinkedIn that you left, I remember turning to my wife. Aaron has a very memorable podcast, and he's got a giant Iron Man suit in the back. So my son, Jack, just absolutely loves it. I was telling my wife that when you made the move to Maricopa County, I said, this guy's gone in like a hot 2 weeks or something like that. And like, there's no way Rich is not recruiting him to Maricopa County. And then I saw the LinkedIn post, and I think I couldn't help myself. I was laughing so hard. Chris, how is Santa Barbara County thinking about Gen AI? Any 1 to 2 use cases that really excite you for service delivery, or now or even in the future?
We don't have an Aaron yet, but let me tell you,
Well, you can't have
Santa Barbara's really nice.
hands off.
No, I'm excited about AI. I think we barely scratched the surface of what its capabilities are and the benefits of it. We recently formed a county AI working group. Really looking forward to what that group is going to be doing for our county. So their focus is 3 things. One is education. The second is governance. And then the third is just opportunities, right? How can we leverage AI? And so this working group meets on a monthly basis, and it's been great. Each month, we also bring in someone that's either an expert in AI or further down the road than we are in AI. And so last month, we had Microsoft come in, and they shared what they're doing with AI, and that was really informative. This month, actually, believe it or not, coincidentally, we're having the city of Gilbert, one of their AI experts. I'm blanking on his name right now, but he's going to be the guest speaker for us because they've been down this road about a year ahead of us. They've put together an AI acceptable use policy and standards and things like that. We just want to learn what they've gone through and what they're seeing. We're just trying to really leverage what's the knowledge that's out there. How can we best utilize AI within our county? And I think a couple of things initially that we want to do is really start to implement large language models, private large language models within our county to assist us with just being able to find resources better, right? We've got all these departments that have siloed data, and when you go to search for something, good luck. It is a challenge to find things. And so I think that if we can start ingesting this information into a large language model, it'll just help both our staff, and then same thing, do an external one for our residents who have the same problem. How do I find what I'm looking for easily and efficiently? And so I think AI will assist us in just being able to provide that information in a much better format than we have currently today. Going down that path, whether it's implementing Copilot or We'll see where we go, but I think it's something that is going to really change government services over time.
I think this is like my favorite use case because I'm using it with the podcast, but like being able to have a conversation with the data or even for city services is so powerful because if you type in a keyword and it gets response, it's like not valid. I'm like, no, you do trash. What's the right keyword? I'm trying to figure it out.
We need to help him with the trash. It must have contacts at the city.
Justin Cure, right? Justin, so you better watch this episode. We're gonna go to Handlebar. We're gonna talk about the trash. He just launched that new mobile app, but we need to get the app updated. So no, that was great. Mike, back on our episode in 2022, you talked about how technology enables government and citizen experiences with AI's growing influence. How do you evaluate or prioritize AI projects in Newcastle County right now? And how have you undertaken any, which is really great, vendor-offered pilot projects that align with your strategic goals?
I'm a part of a national committee for NACO, National Association of County Organizations, right? And we have a working group that's working through the policy. I'm on the application side. We're looking at what are the use cases, what applications could we apply and actually guide a county and help them start looking at what is possible. Where I see it's a challenge from CIOs. We have to hold our leadership back and really set reasonable expectations as our vendor partners are talking about these opportunities. I'm looking out for low risk, high reward, but also do we have the right resources to actually engage that pilot, make it work? Because it takes the business side. And I think the data is where we really struggle on the backside. So as we modernize our legacy systems, we'll start getting our data AI ready to be ingested. And then we can start really understanding the value that's hidden in there. So right now we do not have a current project, but as we speak to vendors, I look for the opportunity. I like to be second sometimes in the new technologies just to take the conservative approach and low risk. Because if we're going to be successful, that first pilot has to be successful, yield the value, and help us make the business case to get the funding to sustain the AI investments.
Okay, so make the business case. Talk about how you make that business case to your boss.
So on a regular basis, I present to my elected official, the county council. I brief them on what we're doing, where we are, state of the county, state of IT, here are my challenges. I routinely brief my county executive, who's our highest elected official, and my leadership team. I bring the topics up in regular conversation. So when it comes time to justify a project, I'm looking at the cost of acquisition, what is the care, the maintenance and operation long-term, and what am I going to actually retire to reinvest in? So it's that constant communication. And I think it's the relationships we build with our peers to understand their business need. Because when I can get a department standing next to me saying, I agree with Mike, we do need this solution, that's definitely a measure of success. And I was able to do that with the consolidation of our land use and public works into one system, was really helping the two departments see the value, the benefit, and leadership as well.
That's great. So Don, as a former CIO, what was one of the biggest challenges you faced procuring and implementing new technologies? And then how do you see SAP's direction in AI addressing some of those challenges?
I would say it's a procurement problem.
But you got to start with the CIO hat first.
I talked about the three-legged stool, overused analogy of people process technology. I'm a technologist's worst nightmare because I have a liberal arts education. And I tend to really focus on the people and process side. And I think that's where we have to work. And it's been an issue for decades, obviously. I'm just going to tell a little story as a former CIO. Early 2010s, coming out of the Great Recession, maybe some of you experienced this, a lot of focus on new budgeting techniques. A book came out called The Price of Government that really espoused an idea to almost take a look at kind of zero-based budgeting concepts to get down to the nut of what an organization really needs to do in terms of its core services. And out of that came things like priority-based budgeting, if you've heard of this, what have you. My organization was very much into that. At the same time, I was trying to shift my department away from a very kind of internally focused culture and also looking at the cloud coming, knowing that we are going to have to shift our relevance away from infrastructure and more toward direct customer service, awareness of business processes within departments, a shift away from the blinking lights of the data center to bringing in business analysts, bringing in application analysts, embedding my team with the departments to learn the business processes better. So what we did, me being the liberal arts guy, brought in a well-known consultant locally, a former CIO from the private sector also did a lot of work for the public sector, and they introduced us to a book called The Diligence of Market Leaders. And basically the idea is you as an organization need to pick one of three silos. Are you going to be operationally excellent? Are you going to differentiate your product? Or are you going to be customer intimate? And you got to pick which one you're going to emphasize, and you need to focus on that. You need to be a little bit of all of those. And through that exercise, we really realized that we want to be customer intimate. That's our survival tactic, basically. But we got to work on the nuts and bolts, the operational excellence side. So we put a lot of effort into that, again, looking at our structure, looking at our different business processes. We then took it forward to the departments, almost concurrent with having to do a big ERP implementation, and said, basically, use this concept and let's take a time out and take a look at our business processes here. Technology is not the panacea. It is really not the panacea. It is an enabler. It's going to do wonderful things. But if you're trying to replicate the same kind of rotten, customized business processes and not try to meet the software in the middle, we're not going to be successful. Obviously, Gartner talks about what's behind unsuccessful implementations. It's a lot of these types of issues. So my answer to your question really is an organization giving itself enough runway to really take a look at its business processes during business transformation efforts. That could be ERP, that could be a permitting system, that could be a regional public safety system, what have you. And I think ultimately it really is incumbent on the CIO to put on a little bit of that liberal arts hat and try to get the organization to think about the people and process side. And that's why I mentioned the product that we have. It gives you an opportunity to, instead of having the big room with the sticky notes, a lot of times we're trying to get executives and working people together to look at processes, automate that, but also give you data on the financial impact of optimizing a business process. I stood in front of councils talking about these are the qualitative things we're going to get from all these great technologies. Really excited about the opportunity to add technology in a way to address the process and people side together.
Okay, so I love that. And I just want to pivot to conversational AI that is recently being rolled out. I'd love to hear how you can leverage the predictive analytics and insights that you were just talking about as a CIO, but now if you think about it as having the lens of this new age technology and the impact that would have for CIOs today.
Joule, it's basically SAP's Copilot, if you will. It's conversational, you can use text, very much like a ChatGPT feature. Currently being used in some different areas, fairly new, but just by way of example, developing job descriptions. Basically, Joule, give me a job descriptions for a park maintenance level 1 person. Also being used for learning paths, education paths for employees, looking at their job function and making recommendations based on their resumes and certifications as well. And we have a product called Concur that is a travel and expense application that's actually, we've been doing AI for about a decade now, where it can do things like scan a receipt and basically interpret exactly what the charge was, what the classification was, things of that nature. It's used for fraud detection, things of that nature. Where it becomes exciting and also a challenge is its ability to use internal curated data and reputable outside sources. Our big focus with AI is that it be responsible, relevant, and reliable. And the responsible part is a big part of what we're focused on. International company, one of the biggest software companies out there, we are being consulted by governments around the world on the responsible side, the ethics side, the legal, the privacy issues, things of that nature. Point I'm trying to get to is we believe as an all-in cloud company now that what is absolutely essential for organizations to understand, and this gets back to the people and process side, is you've got to have a clean digital core. You've got to get off the customization sauce. We are the company that had a lot of dexterity to let you customize your systems. Now in the cloud, we are the company that's bringing the best industry practices in the public sector, saying, trust us. We're going to provide those very specialized functionalities. But by going to the cloud, you're buying into the idea that you're going to have to meet us in the middle. We'll give you configuration options, but you're not going to customize anymore. The clean core is really essential. It's not straying into weird data schemas, processes, things of that nature. And that's the story behind reputable AI, is getting organizations to normalize their data. That's the only way you get reputable outcomes. And so we're really focused on having reputable internal data mesh with outside data. Give you the example of the job description. Reaching out, looking at a groundskeeper one database of external data sources, bringing in the one that we have internally, bringing those two together and coming up with a reputable recommendation. And what really gets me excited is this idea of process improvement. Think of basically taking a look at a 311 call that was, we'll call it suboptimal. and saying, Jewel, tell me what could have been done differently and what it cost to have messed up this 311 call. And using this Signavio process mining capability to look at the entire stream of activities that took place and tell you what you could have done better with that particular issue. Now, that doesn't exist now, but all the infrastructure is there too.
Oh, okay, so I do like that example a lot. I do that with my own podcast. I told this to JR the other night. I said, JR, you've been on like 5 times. He's, I know. And so I'll take your transcript and I'll put it in. I'll say, what did I miss? How could I have interviewed JR better? And he just laughs at me. He's very kind. But I love having that conversation. I did the same thing. This is pretty nerdy, but I actually exported all of my own financial data, stripped out all the private stuff, and so it's just numbers, raw numbers, and threw it into ChatGPT and start having a conversation with a spreadsheet. And Morgan's, that's great. But it's very insightful. It starts to give you things where, if you ever took a business class in college, I took financial accounting, managerial accounting, and other business classes, and the rate at which it can just process data is awesome, which is really great. It's super exciting. And again, SAP's got a way larger scale than tech tables. So I think there's going to be some powerful unlocks, but the prep to get that there requires the right data, which required me to go through hundreds of transactions myself to get that ready at that point. So,
and what's cool for us, just really quickly, is I talked about the stereotype of the big omnipotent company. By nature of the fact that we're moving to the cloud, that we're building this reputation on being a business process improvement company, a lot more accessible financially to these types of technologies. The complexity of implementation, the risk goes down. I'm super excited about our ability to help the middle market in the public sector access a lot of these things.
That's great. Mike, this is just one section you'd mentioned in an email that you wanted to touch on, but it is an election year. And I'd love to hear your insights on budget and funding cycles within Delaware. How are you communicating the long-term value of investments to leadership given the short-term nature of the election cycle?
Being an appointed official, so this is a resume-generating event as the election comes up. You got to be ready for change. But in all honesty, it's really taking a look back and through that business case, telling that story over time and putting it to paper with a transition document and actually showing the successes and demonstrating where technology has enabled the government to be responsive, to deliver value to the citizens and make it sustainable. If you tell the story right and your agencies are sitting there next to you, they're going to tell the story for you. That helps validate what we're putting together on paper. So as we pull together our historical look back of what we did that was successful and what we need to sustain funding going forward, is blending the successes with where we are today and where we can be tomorrow. And the story becomes real when you start seeing the dollars saved over time. I look at the escalators we deal with our software licensing, right? It used to be 3 to 5%, now it's north of 5% plus. So for the last 4 years, I've been trending that out. So when I went to the budget office to say, I need an escalator in my base budget, I was able to demonstrate that over time through data. So I tell my team, data tells a story and information builds trust. So it's that continual, consistent message of what we're doing, what we're going to do, and this is what the benefits are. Will help get those budgets right. Even at the state level, a bigger budget where I used to work, we'd have that transition document. We'd do our position policy papers and really try to lay out that smooth transition for continuity of government. But we have to tell a story and show value.
Is it your boss that's running for governor?
So yes, my county executive is term limited out. So he is now he's running for governor. He's one of 3. He has a high probability to be very successful at governor. And so I'm looking at a change at the state level and at the county level. September is the primary, and that is the election in Delaware.
And then if we have good news, we might be going to Delaware.
We'll gladly have you at the governor's.
I love it. Chris, you're a big fan of remote work. And we're going to wrap this up with IT culture and collaboration. If you could talk about building a strong culture and high-performing teams in a hybrid work remote environment, specifically any tools, platforms that have been effective in fostering the collaboration and connection that's just so desperately needed.
Yeah, so in my former company, we went to a remote workforce back in 2010, but we had to because the cost of living in Santa Barbara is so high. The median home price today is north of $2 million, and that's for a 1,500 square foot rancher home. And so the middle class has really largely been pushed out of Santa Barbara. And so For my former company to survive, we had to move to a remote workforce. And so we had employees all over the United States that worked for us. And so then I needed to figure out, okay, what's the best framework for a hybrid or remote workforce, right? How do you make sure that everyone is doing what they're supposed to be doing? How do you hold them accountable? How do you build a strong culture when you're not seeing each other face to face? And I came across a great framework called the EOS, or Entrepreneurial Operating
I
System.
love this, which we talked about on episode 1.
If you haven't read that book, it's called Traction. I highly recommend it. We implemented that within my former company, and it was a game changer for us. It helped us to create a culture of accountability, of goal setting, and just the ability to create a strong, vibrant culture, even though we weren't together in person. When I came to the public sector, I thought, I wonder if the EOS framework would work in the public sector, because I'd never heard about anybody doing it in the public sector. It's always been in private sector focused. I decided to implement it. Long story short, it works just as well in the public sector as it does in the private sector. And so our team today is following a lot of what EOS recommends. We have our daily huddles in the morning. We have our quarterly goals, our annual goals, that's all visible to everyone on the team. I can tell you that our IT team today has accomplished over 500 goals already this year, and everyone can see what those goals are. And so now that it's caught the attention of the CEO of the county, and she's thinking about rolling it out countywide. So it's been exciting to see. So yeah, big believer in a hybrid workforce as long as you've got a good framework to follow.
Yeah, I love that. And I've seen the spreadsheet, so it's pretty epic to see how many goals have actually been accomplished. Mike, how does Newcastle County collaborate? You have such an interesting background at the state level and at the county. Has that helped you been able to collaborate across?
Absolutely. Delaware, the size is our strength, right? You could drive end to end in 90 minutes. So when we have issues that are impacting state and local government. Like I chair the state federal cybersecurity grant program, right? Dispersing funds across the state. And it brings us all together, all the municipalities, because we have to distribute 80% of money to the local and 20% to the state. So my biggest challenge is fending off the state so they don't dip deeper try to get into the bucket of money. But we come together routinely through our meetings, to our general, when we have issues because of the size. It's very easy. But nationally, my goal is to get my team to really learn from others. We all fight the same battle, and it's events like Podcast Live here event. We share information. You get to learn what's working in other jurisdictions and take that back to the local and figure out how do we adapt it for us. But in Delaware, it's easy because of our size, and we communicate very closely and quickly when things aren't going well. It's up close and personal politics.
Rich, Arizona's, I think, just myself traveling across the U.S., is pretty unique, where a lot of folks all from the K-12 to higher ed, to the cities, the counties, and state level are all friends, which is pretty cool. That's, by the way, that's not the case in other states I go to. Could you just talk about that level of collaboration and how that just benefits Arizona at large?
So you call it collaboration, I call it group therapy. There's so many of us that are tackling different things at different times. Pretty much someone has done whatever we're thinking of trying to do. Now, Aaron will look at me funny and go, I don't know. He's doing some pretty cutting edge stuff. So we agree with, sometimes it's good to be second, but there are times where we really want to push the envelope on being first, right? But you have the risks associated with that. But that whole collaboration, I think we are unique in Arizona. We all do compare a lot of notes. We've talked a lot about AI. How do you put policies in place? JR, Bianca, and others have shared policies with us. I'm definitely going to look at the COS stuff. Very interesting. But I tend to gravitate, and maybe because I have a liberal arts degree as well, I gravitate to the people side of the stool, right? We talk about all this incredible tech, but when we're talking to our county manager or our supervisors, we're not talking about any of the tech side. They get AI now because once ChatGPT came out and they all started using it, it was like AI was just invented and we've got to be in the AI business. But to me, the most valuable thing is the collaboration, learning from others, but then just having the best possible talent you can possibly have, because tech is usually not the issue, right? It can do just about anything we want it to do, but you have to have the people who can engage the business and our county leadership to say, what are you really trying to accomplish? What are the business outcomes? Because we are guilty of this at times. I think we all are if we're passionate about technology. We just want to throw AI on everything like hot sauce, as Aaron would say. But the reality is those conversations look very different. We have to have our business engagement manager saying, what problem are we solving? What outcome do you want to achieve? And then we put all the pieces together, and as you've talked about with data and the platforms, those all have to be in place for us to really scale and sustain that kind of transformation, because that's what they're looking for, right? We try to be aware all the time that anything we're doing with technology with those departments, all they care about is the business capability, the service delivery, what they can deliver with that technology. So it's great to hear stories, to your question, it's great to hear stories from everyone here, not just our local folks that hang out, but now Chris and Mike and others. It's really good to hear all the success stories and the challenges and the therapy. It is therapy at times.
Don, in 2 minutes or less, any closing thoughts on IT culture, collaboration?
Great example from my past in Washington State, just really briefly. I had a really brilliant suburban communities in the Seattle area, the tech corridor. I was the IT leader in Kirkland, Washington, which is next to Bellevue, Redmond, where Microsoft is located, Issaquah and Mercer Island. And we all got together during a time when there was a lot of business development going on, a building and what have you. And we were really finding that there was a lot of frustration from both residents and the building community about permitting processes. And the business leaders got together with help from the leaders and built a collaborative platform that's still in place 20 years later called mybuildingpermit.com. I was involved in the first 2 years, so I'm not going to take any credit for it. I was in the birthing process, if you will. But I bring that up because I think there is so much that can be done regionally around collaboration. We talked originally about SAP and our platform. Not an SAP story, but a lot of the technology, the business technology platform for data integration, data management, data scrubbing, draws disparate permitting systems together in this one interface that gives an ability for a resident or a business to not only use consistent geospatial data, but get information on permitting requirements. It's driven permitting consistency and collaboration across jurisdictions. And now it's used by 15 different jurisdictions in the area, including King County and Snohomish County, which are huge organizations. I bring it up because, again, people process. It really brought together these organizations to talk about normalizing their processes, making it easier for folks to go through the permitting process. And just a fantastic, I think, illustration of people, process, technology stool being perfectly balanced in terms of a great story.
That's fantastic. Thank you for coming on the Public Sector Show by Tech Tables.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Joe Tossi from TechTables.com, and you're listening to the Public Sector Show by Tech Tables. This podcast features human-centric stories from public sector CIOs, CISOs, and technology leaders across federal, state, city, county, and higher education. You'll gain valuable insights into current issues and challenges faced by top leaders. Through interviews, speaking engagements, live podcast tour events, we offer you a behind-the-mic look at the opportunities top leaders are seeing today. And to make sure you never miss an episode, head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and hit that follow button and leave a quick rating. Just tap the number of stars that you think this show deserves.